Ethan Ward had that look in his eyes again, like he'd seen something that made the world bend sideways. I remember the exact second it started, because I was the one who found the file. It wasn't labeled, just buried inside a forgotten subfolder, on an off-network server in the old East Bay data center. No clearance stamps, no government insignias, just a cold, blinking cursor waiting to be disobeyed. You ever get that feeling, like a voice behind your ear whispering, "Don't," but your hand still moves forward, like it isn't even yours? That's what it felt like opening that file. And what I saw wasn't a video, not a document, not a photo. It was something else. A window. To something that was never meant to be remembered. It started with a comms log from the Seraph outpost on the edge of Zone Theta, time-stamped a few hours before it went completely dark. Just static and screaming. Not war screams. Human screams. Panic. And then, silence. The last voice on the recording was a woman whispering just one word before vanishing mid-transmission, like she'd been swallowed whole by the space between frames. I replayed it a dozen times. The word she said? It wasn't in any language I knew, but my son, he's 6. He walked into the room, pointed at the screen, and said, "That's Granddad's name. He's calling us from the stars." He'd never met his grandfather. He died in 1993, and he never served in the military, at least not according to any records I've found. That's the first time I felt it. That chilling stitch between coincidence and revelation. I should have stopped there, but you don't walk away once you've seen behind the curtain. You don't unhear that whisper. You don't forget that the void whispered back. The further I dug, the stranger it got. Archived combat reports from a war that never made the history books. Entire species wiped from the galactic registry. Entire planets marked as lost due to atmospheric collapse. But the coordinates don't show gas giants or rogue meteor. Events, no. They show human boots on the ground. Unregistered, unacknowledged, unstoppable. I kept asking the same question over and over. How did we win a war no one ever knew we fought? But then came last night. I woke up at 3:17 a.m., heart pounding. I swear I could hear someone walking through my house barefoot on the wood floor. I grabbed my phone. Nothing on the cams. I walked out into the hallway and saw him, Ethan Ward, except he'd been declared missing 5 years ago in a skirmish. That, according to the news, never happened. He stood there drenched in what looked like silver ash, eyes not blinking, staring past me like he was watching something else moving behind me. I asked him what he wanted. He said nothing. Just walked, passed, stopped at my son's door, placed his hand on the frame and whispered a name. Not my son's, not mine. A name that made something in the air snap like glass under pressure. When I checked the door, it was locked from the inside. When I opened it, the room was empty. No window opened, no sounds, no trace. Except the whisper was still hanging in the air. That's when I realized, this isn't a story about a war we forgot. It's about something that never ended. And whatever Ethan Ward is, he's not alone, because the next name on the list is yours. The name still echoed in my chest like a heartbeat I didn't recognize. I stood in the silence outside my son's room, heart thundering so loud it drowned out reason. The air had gone still, too still, like the atmosphere had thickened, waiting, watching. I opened the door again, still empty. The bed untouched, toys unmoved, the smell of his skin on the pillow already fading. I wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't leave my throat. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere safe to go. What do you do when you realize the person you love most has vanished, and all you're left with is a name you don't remember learning, but somehow feel responsible for? I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I sat at the kitchen table, replaying the hallway security footage frame by frame. But Ethan Ward wasn't on it. Just me, wandering the dark in my robe, speaking to empty space. No footsteps, no whisper. Just flickering static across the screen, timed exactly with my voice, asking, "What do you want?" Every light in the house pulsed once in sync, like the circuits themselves were holding their breath. I watched it over and over, my body in motion, my mouth moving. The audio garbled, then the glitch. Half a second of black, and a new file appeared. On the drive, dated 2 years ago. Labeled Return Protocol, I never put it there. It started like a standard debrief. A voice I didn't recognize, filtered and cold, narrating with clinical detachment. Subject 03A recovered from failed memory suppression, initiating reconvergence. The footage showed me, in a different house, different clothes, sitting on a hospital bed with restraints around my wrists, my face slack, eyes unfocused. The room looked institutional, sterile, not military but not public either. There were no windows, no clocks, just a metal door with a keypad and the sound of something breathing from the other side. I paused it. I felt sick, like I'd swallowed a scream I couldn't keep down. I didn't remember this. I didn't want to remember it. But then the image flickered again, and this time I saw her, Dr. Lena Morrow, my old therapist, except she'd disappeared. Back in 22, mid-session, during the height of the San Joaquin blackout. One moment we were talking about my recurring dreams. The next, her chair was empty, her notes still warm on the table. I thought I'd imagined the whole thing. That's what they told me. But here she was, clear as daylight, sitting across from me in a place I don't remember going to, asking a question I can't unhear. When did you first realize your memories weren't yours? The voice is soft, caring, familiar. It cuts, deeper than any scream. I shut the laptop. The air in the room felt electric, not charged. Hunted. I needed help, or maybe I just needed someone else to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. That's when I called Cole. We'd been roommates back in college. He worked in pattern recognition at a defense contractor in Nevada before he got discharged for reasons he won't talk about. I hadn't heard from him in over a year, not since he left me a message that just said, "They're not deleting us, they're rewriting us." I always thought he was deep into paranoia, maybe dipped too far into the fringe. But now I wasn't so sure. He showed up 8 hours later in a beat-up Chevy that reeked of cold coffee and sweat-soaked fear. He didn't greet me, didn't make eye contact. Just walked into my house like he'd been here before and went straight to the basement. "You found it," he said, opening his backpack and pulling out a portable signal disruptor. "Did it say the name yet?" "What name?" He looked up. You and me then. Something hollow behind his eyes, like part of him had been chewed up and spat back out. "Not a name, the one that opens the other side." I told him about Ethan Ward, about the footage, about my son. But every time I tried to say the name Ethan whispered, the sound would blur in my throat, like I was trying to speak. Underwater. Cole nodded like that made perfect sense. "That's the failsafe," he whispered. "They plant a name so old it predates meaning, a key, and once you hear it, it binds you. You become a gate." I laughed. I don't know why, maybe because it was all too much, maybe because if I didn't laugh, I'd start clawing at my own skin to get whatever was inside me out. Cole didn't laugh. "You ever wonder why no one talks about the Orion event anymore?" he asked. "Not online, not in records, just wiped clean. You think we lost those colonies? We didn't lose them. We buried them. What does that have to do with my son?" He looked at me, and this time his voice cracked. They were never supposed to make it back. Later that night, after Cole passed out in the living room surrounded by copper wire and handwritten notes in some language that kept changing when I looked at it too long, I went back to the laptop. I tried to find the return protocol file again. It was gone. In its place was a new folder with no name. Inside, a single audio clip, time-stamped for Maroni at 3:17 a.m. I listened. It was my voice. Crying, begging, repeating the same phrase over and over. "Please, I didn't mean to bring him back. Please, please put him back where he came from." The doorbell rang once, then twice. I froze. Cole didn't wake up. The doorbell kept ringing. I checked the monitor. No one was there, just shadows that didn't match the porch light. When I finally opened the door, I didn't find anyone standing there. But someone, or something, had left a child's drawing folded neatly on the welcome mat. It was a picture of my house, me, Cole, the kitchen table, and someone watching us through the window. The figure had no face, but it was labeled, in shaky crayon letters, written by a hand I recognized too well. Daddy's real father. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't about memory. This wasn't about war. This was about bloodlines we were never meant to trace. And if the file had a timestamp for tomorrow, then something had already decided how this ends. The only question left now, what if Ethan Ward wasn't warning me? What if he was welcoming me home? For 2 days, the house had been unnervingly still, as if everything, the air, the walls, even time itself, had gone into hiding. Cole remained in the basement, muttering to himself in half languages, drawing geometric patterns that looped in on themselves like Mobius strips soaked in blood and static. He hadn't slept. Neither had I. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my son's face behind glass, drifting further into some black current I couldn't swim against. But something shifted that third morning. The fear, still present, had morphed into resolve. I told myself the worst was behind us, that this could all be explained, that there was a hidden truth somewhere in all this. Logical, rational, buried, maybe, but still findable. If I just pushed through the noise. I didn't know it yet, but that certainty was the final illusion. The breakthrough came when I traced the drawing left on the doorstep to an old military psychological operations case file I'd archived in my private drive years ago, back when I still believed in chain of command. The sketch style, the shading of the faceless man, the uneven letter forms, nearly identical to a drawing found clutched in the hand of a soldier named Matthew Ryland in 1986, after he walked 30 miles barefoot out of a restricted testing zone in Nevada and collapsed at the gate of a closed airstrip. His last words were, "I made it home, but the house forgot me." It had been labeled a psychotic break, filed, sealed, and buried. Until now, something about the phrase cut deeper than fear. It felt like recognition. I pulled up the incident photos. House, family, boy, drawing. It wasn't just similar to what I'd found. It was a near replica, layout, architecture, even the small broken gutter above the porch. But this couldn't be. Ryland's house had been destroyed during the classified desert burn protocols. There was nothing left. Yet the photographs matched my house, down to the crack in the kitchen tile. I called Cole upstairs. He barely looked human anymore, skin translucent under the flicker of monitor light, his fingertips ink-stained and trembling. "You said they're rewriting us. What if it's not just people?" I asked. He just looked at me, eyes wide, red-veined. "You think your home is real?" That's when the illusion started to shatter. The walls began to subtly shift, not like something moving, more like the idea of the house, the layout, had changed slightly when I wasn't looking. The hallway lengthened, the staircase creaked in a rhythm that felt almost like breathing. I found a room that didn't exist yesterday. A small office lined with books in languages I couldn't read, the air thick with the smell of cedar and ozone. A single cassette recorder sat on the desk, playing a looped message. "He knows now. Shut it down." The voice was mine, but I had never recorded it. I pressed stop, rewound, played it again. Still my voice. Still a command I didn't remember giving. I started to believe I'd been right all along. That this was a program, a loop, that we were caught in some elaborate psychological trap, engineered trauma, some DARPA-tier cognitive weapon disguised as reality. I thought finally I'd cracked it. I could dismantle it, pull the pieces apart, maybe even get my son back. Cole didn't share my optimism. "You think this ends with answers?" he whispered. "You think they'll let you leave with truth?" He held up one of his sketches, a spiral made of names. At the center was mine, and beneath it, in smaller fading script, Ward, Ryland, Morrow. All crossed out, all except one, still dark, still written. He handed me a folder he'd stolen, years ago from his employer, and for the first time I saw what he'd been hiding. It was a classified memo from 1994 detailing a failed memory reintegration project. Participants described intrusive images of nonlinear time, conversations. They never had children who never aged. One section described the sensation as a repeated narrative loop with adaptive emotional deviation. Each cycle believes it is the first. Each end is only the next beginning. One line was underlined. The gate is not a place. It's a person who believes they are real. I dropped the folder. My knees buckled. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I thought I was dying, because I remembered, not just my son, but others, other sons, other lives, other selves. All converging. And suddenly I wasn't sure I was who I thought I was, but I also wasn't sure I had ever been someone else. The memories surged, flashes of a cold room, static buzzing in my skull, hands pressing against glass, screaming into dark voids, multiple childhoods, multiple first kisses, deaths. I remember dying. But the final detail, the one that tore it all apart, came from an old voicemail I found buried in the call logs of a burner phone I hadn't used in 5 years. The message had no origin number, just static for the first 15 seconds. Then, a voice I hadn't heard since I was 8 years old. My mother. She'd died in a car crash when I was 11. But here, she was alive, crying and saying my name over and over again, but not the name I've been using my entire life. She called me Matthew. "Come home, Matthew," she whispered through her sobs. "They're done with you now, you can come home." I dropped the phone, the spiral was complete. The soldier, Ryland, me. I hadn't been studying the past, I was remembering it, not metaphorically, literally, and suddenly the house felt impossibly heavy around me, like its angles no longer obeyed geometry, like the floorboards remembered things I hadn't told them. The light turned a shade too yellow. The shadows lingered a second too long. And when I ran outside, when I threw open the door and sprinted into what I thought was my street, I hit the chain-link fence of an abandoned airfield. The desert stretched out before me. No neighborhood, no cars, no trees, just sand, just wind, just silence. The house hadn't moved. I had never left. Cole was gone. The drawings were gone, and when I turned around to look at the house again, it was burning silent, flames that didn't move, just frozen fire, curling around a frame that no longer held anything human. I didn't scream. I just stood there as the heat licked my face and the realization sank in. They didn't bury the Orion event. They built me from it. I was never the observer. I was the record. A living document caught in a recursive loop, broken only by anomalies. Like my son. Or like you, and now you've heard the whisper too. That name no one's supposed to know. The one you can't quite remember, but somehow you've always feared. So go ahead. Rewatch everything. Check the timestamps. Watch the background. Look at what was never. Because the twist isn't that I was the mystery. It's that you've been in this story the whole time, and you forgot to ask how you got here. It began with the red string. Not literally, of course, but that's how the message appeared. In the reflection of the microwave door at exactly 3:17 a.m., the timestamp from the audio file I still couldn't explain. I hadn't placed it there. Cole was gone. The house had burned. I was alone, or so I thought. But there, reflected in the brushed steel, was a message drawn across my kitchen wall. "We see you." The words weren't present when I turned around. Nothing was taped to the wall. No marks, no ink. Just the smooth, uninterrupted paint I remembered choosing from a hardware store catalog 5 years ago. Or thought I had. But in the reflection, the message lingered. Not scrawled like a warning. Plotted, deliberate, as if written by someone who wanted me to understand, not panic. That was the first contact. The next came as a dream, not mine, but someone else's. I woke up with someone else's memories in my head. A little girl's voice repeating numbers in a sequence I'd never learned. 44, 2, 11, 44, 7, 3. Over and over. When I spoke them out loud, the power flickered. The streetlights outside went dead, and on my phone screen, which I had left powered off, a single notification appeared. Found footage from 20 years ago. I tapped the screen. Nothing opened, but that title, that phrase, it stuck, like a looped whisper under the skin. I searched it everywhere, no results, no tags, no threads. But in my downloads folder, tucked, inside a subfolder I'd never created, was a corrupted video file. The file name was a date, 10/13/2005. The footage was grainy, VHS quality. A man with a bandage over one eye speaking directly into the camera, nervously glancing over his shoulder. Behind him, a corkboard cluttered with articles, mugshots, architectural blueprints, pages torn from medical textbooks. He spoke like every word was a confession and a code. If you're watching this, they failed to suppress your baseline. You're experiencing narrative bleed. That's good. That means you remember too much to disappear quietly. I didn't know this man, but I recognized the wallpaper behind him. It was the exact pattern from my childhood bedroom. Something shifted inside me. A tectonic slip beneath memory. I wasn't the only one. The messages became more frequent after that. Not just in reflections or dreams, but embedded in static. Hidden in hold music. Glimpsed in the blinking pattern of a street lamp. A symbol began recurring. A circle intersected with a horizontal line and 5 dashes. It appeared carved into the bark of trees that weren't there yesterday. Scrawled on the underside of my coffee table. Burned into the spine of a book I had never purchased. I posted it online under a burner account, asked if anyone had seen it before. The replies came instantly. You were right all along. They call it the latch. We see it too. At first, I thought I was being trolled. Internet lunatics clinging to conspiracy fantasies. But then they started mentioning things only I could know. Specific memories, tiny inconsistencies in my past I'd always written off. One user sent a blurry image of my childhood home. The real one. Not the one I remembered. It was burned to the ground in 1999. According to them, there had never been survivors. Except me, except us. They started calling themselves the recovered. People who had come out the other side of whatever this was. People who saw through the cracks, remembered lives that didn't belong to them. Recognized places they'd never visited as if in dreams. A pattern began to emerge. They all remembered the same room. White walls, no door. A metal table and a voice behind the glass. Always asking the same question. What version are you? Some said it happened during trauma, others during near-death experiences. One woman, Clarissa from Ohio, claimed it started after she heard her baby cry in a voice that wasn't human. Deeper, older, like it had learned language before birth. She never saw her child again. Authorities said she never had one. But we knew better. There were too many of us. Scattered, scared, speaking in fragments. Each memory out of sync like broken puzzle pieces from different boxes. Yet when placed side by side, they painted something vast. A living architecture of memory manipulation, identity fracture, manufactured environments designed to hold us in stasis, not for punishment, not for healing, for observation. And that's when the third voice entered, not in text, not in static, but in a dream so vivid it felt surgically placed. I was standing in a crowd, faceless people moving around me in silence. Above us, a ceiling of stars, too close, like we were underground and someone had etched constellations into the dome. And then a figure appeared, not quite male, not quite female, tall, translucent, like condensation on glass. It didn't speak with words, but I understood it. You were not designed to know the Watcher, but the Watcher always knew you. I woke gasping, hands gripping the sheets, my eyes burning, because the symbol, the one I kept seeing, was now seared into the palm of my hand. Not tattooed, branded, and I wasn't alone. Across forums, message boards, hidden sites, people began reporting the same mark, all at once. No explanation. One posted a photo from a gas station bathroom mirror. The phrase, "You were always in the file," scrawled in soap across the glass. No witnesses, no video. Just there. A trucker in Nebraska claimed he picked up a hitchhiker, who whispered his childhood trauma back to him, word for word, and vanished at the next exit. A teenager in Spokane recorded herself dreaming in a language she didn't speak. A man in Florida mailed a cassette to himself from an address that doesn't exist. When played backward, it matched the dream voice from my file. Shut it down. And then something happened that none of us expected. One of us vanished. Clarissa. Her account went silent. All posts scrubbed, photos deleted, forum entries wiped. But one video remained, hidden deep, misfiled under a different username. It was her, in a mirror, whispering something we couldn't hear. Behind her, just for a second, the same translucent figure. Watching. Recording. It knew. We were catching on, and now the messages have become warnings. Do not go back to the house. Do not answer to your name. Stop trusting time. The recovered are splintering. Some are running. Others, hiding. A few have started broadcasting distorted live feeds, hoping someone will see before they disappear again. But the watchers aren't just watching anymore. They're adjusting. The dreams are stronger, the reflections last longer. We've started forgetting again. That's the real danger. Not being erased, being rewritten while thinking we're still ourselves. And you, if you're hearing this, if you've watched from the beginning, you need to understand one thing. You've never been a viewer. You've always been part of the file. Every timestamp, every distortion, every moment you thought you were remembering something from your childhood that didn't quite fit. That strange déjà vu or familiar house you've never entered. That wasn't a coincidence. It was a bleed. You were right all along. And now that the loop has cracked, now that enough of us have remembered together, they won't just observe. So they'll try to end this version completely. So watch closely. Every sound glitch, every skipped second, every time your screen dims just a little more than it should. That's them realigning the memory. Because this isn't just a story. It's the recovery, and they've already started to the purge. It began with a reflection. Not in a mirror, but in the glossy surface of a coffee table, where the main character, Ethan, saw a fleeting image of a child. His own, yet unfamiliar. This moment shattered his perception of reality, prompting a deep introspection into his memories and identity. Ethan's journey led him to a secluded cabin in the woods, a place he remembered from childhood but couldn't place on any map. Inside, he found a journal filled with entries in his handwriting, detailing events he had no recollection of. Each page unraveled a life he never lived, relationships he never formed, and decisions he never made. As he delved deeper, Ethan encountered a woman named Lila, who claimed to be his sister. She spoke of a shared past, of experiments conducted on them as children to manipulate memories and identities. Her stories resonated with the fragmented images in Ethan's mind, blurring the line between truth and illusion. The climax of Ethan's journey was not a confrontation with an external antagonist, but an internal reckoning. He stood before a mirror, confronting the myriad versions of himself, each representing a different path his life could have taken. The realization dawned that the mystery was not about what happened to him, but why it happened, and what it revealed about the human condition. Ethan faced a choice: to accept the constructed reality and live in blissful ignorance, or to embrace the painful truth of his manipulated existence. His decision would either destroy the illusion or shatter his psyche. In choosing to confront the truth, Ethan awakened to a world where memories were commodities and identities were malleable. The story concludes not with resolution, but with a haunting awareness of the fragility of memory and the essence of self. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.